Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's recording here on the Rachel Varga podcast. We're going live as usual, Rachel Varga official Facebook page, YouTube channel. So if you like watching these interviews, those are a fantastic way to kind of like see our faces and all of that, get a little bit more interactive if you want. And then the podcast is fantastic to tune in on the go. So today's episode, we are going to learn how happiness and joy increase our health and can lead into more radiant skin. And this is something that I've been observing in my, highly vibrant clients that I've been working with for the last 10 years, seeing what different men and women are doing, especially between the ages of, 50 all the way up to 95. I really have a subset of clients that focus on their joy. They focus on their happiness. And we have a fantastic speaker to really add some metrics to how we can actually measure our joy, which is really fascinating, and measure our happiness and look for different clues and strategies to optimize what we're doing in here, right? And also in our heart space. So our head, our heart space, these are all aspects that we can really pull from to optimize our joy and happiness in our lives, which then has a fantastic trickle-down effect into people, places, and things that we interact with. Margie Bissinger is a physical therapist, integrative health coach, and happiness trainer. Margie has over 25 years of experience helping people with osteoporosis and osteopenia improve their bone health through an integrative, comprehensive approach utilizing whole foods, exercise, supplements, mind-body relaxation techniques, and happiness training. Margie is the author of Osteoporosis, an exercise guide, and is the host of the Happy Bones, Happy Life podcast, which Margie had me on recently. A fabulous interview. Make sure you check that one out. Margie believes that happiness plays an integral role in our health. She has been teaching her patients happiness habits over 35 years and seen the powerful effects of happiness on chronic pain and recovery. Margie created the Happy Me, Happy Life 8-week online program to help increase their others' happiness levels, energy, and overall health. And by the way, Margie's resources are all going to be linked up in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. Margie has lectured to Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, hospitals, and women's groups throughout the country. She has been featured in the New York Times, Menopause Management, OBGYN News, and contributed to numerous health and fitness books. What a pleasure to have Margie joining us today. Margie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, Rachel, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I had so much fun when you were on my podcast, and I'm really thrilled that we can be together again.
And one of the things I really like doing with you, Margie, is kind of just like, number one, communing, right? Because, we really see what our most radiant, vibrant clients are doing. And it's not just the skincare products they're putting on their face, right? A skincare cream isn't all of a sudden, or a treatment, going to make you necessarily look happier and more vibrant overnight. You got to do the inner stuff. You don't just want to be looking for that magical beauty product or magical treatment that's all of a sudden going to make you happier. And this is actually an issue that we see with body dysmorphia. So individuals who do have, there's a mental component to them wanting to look at doing getting beauty products and getting rejuvenation treatments. They're looking for ways to make themselves happier externally. So we're going to take a step back, and I'd love for Margie, for you to just quickly share with us some of the resources that you have, and then I'm going to be asking you what your most radiant clients are doing.
Oh, okay, sure. So I think the best thing, my favorite right now, and especially during this time when so many people are inside, is my live 8-week Happy Me, Happy Life class, because we get together and we go through the concepts and habits of happy people. And when you learn that, and we'll go into this later, that we can actually raise our happiness levels. So it's funny because I taught so many things. I teach an osteoporosis program. I teach many classes, but this has been the most powerful. It's a whole day. My mood is elevated just from being with everyone from the class. So I would say, so that, and then the journal that everyone's getting, which is, it's a happiness habit journal, like a week. So each day it introduces you to a new habit. and you can, some things to write down. So it's really a great way to see what works, because these habits are so powerful, as well as a 7-minute morning meditation that just sort of uplifts you and gets you going on your day on a happy note and a positive note. So
Yep.
those are, I'd say, the best ones to get started with.
Love it. I actually do start my morning, and before I drift off to sleep, I always do a meditation. So you're catching me post meditation right now. So I'm feeling great.
Fabulous.
All right. So the number one question I ask everybody that comes on the show: what are your most radiant clients doing?
I think my most radiant clients are doing habits that really define what my feeling of happiness is, which is a deep level of sense of well-being, peace and well-being that's not dependent on their external circumstances. So I feel that they're doing habits throughout their day to keep this going and to keep in this mindset and to keep in this energy.
So you primarily work with women who I would say are, they're entering different stages in life, whether it's, menopause, because obviously your specialty is in osteoporosis. So when you see women that are navigating that time in their life with a little bit more ease, what are some of the habits that they're doing?
It's really so incredible. What I found is, I think it starts at the very base level, where the people start taking responsibility for their life. So they look at life that they're a victor and not a victim. And I see that as a physical therapist. I've been seeing this for years, especially with people with chronic pain, because the body, just like you see with the skin, I'll see in the muscles. So muscles will be in spasm and different things, but yet it's not related to, so often it's related to that they're feeling victimized, or, oh, poor me. So I think that's the first thing. And you can tell if you're in this victim mode by 3 ways: blaming, shaming, and complaining. And so, I think that's step one, is that when I see people, in that mode, just getting out of that. And I'll find myself sometimes like, and I think it's easy now. There's so much going on in the world. It's so easy to sort of say, oh, poor us, we're stuck inside, or whatever it is. But then when you just switch the mindset, instead of focusing on the problems, to the solutions, okay, well, what can I do? And I think it makes a big difference. So I'd say, there's so many different habits. There's 21 habits I teach for happy people, in terms of practicing. But I think that's the base level. I think when people can switch that makes such a difference in how they really, how it affects every aspect of their health and their life.
I definitely observe different cultivated practices: body, mind, spirit, energy optimization. We could go into a whole breadth of detail along all of those lines, but are you noticing that as well? Is it really cultivated practices that you'll see? You may be working with someone for the first time in their 30s and 40s, but then you see an older client and they're already doing these things. What are some of the differences you're seeing with some of your older versus younger clients?
Okay, I think it doesn't even matter so much the older clients. I think it's just exactly what you said. It's the people who are practicing these habits. So I see people who have morning routines, whatever it is, whether it's meditation, whether it's getting out in the woods, something to help with relaxation and help really connect you almost to, a power higher than yourself, just to universal energy. So when people are doing practices, I see that it's not that there's stress in this world. So it's not that you're going to reduce their stress, but it's their resilience. It's the outcome. So 2 people can be sitting in a car in traffic, and one person's pulling their hair out and the other person is just taking some deep breaths, thinking of some gratitudes. It's night and day what it does to your system. So their health is completely different just because they're doing these practices. So I've seen, and it's really since my early 20s, when I started working in how I got into the happiness, when I realized the power of these things. I've been every single client I've worked with, as I said, for over 35 years, it's makes such a difference. So I see that it completely changes their stress levels. And that affects, as you know so well, that affects every single organ in your body. And so it's amazing that you can live the same life and be at a completely, it will look completely different, even though you may have the same job, you may have the same friends, you may have the same issues, but on one hand, you're able to cope and you have techniques and strategies, and on the other hand, you can ride the waves. And on the other hand, life is just the waves are like throwing you down. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed, because I've been working with clients pretty well all year, aside from about 3 months this year for obvious reasons. And I actually find that the women that are either in menopause or have passed through menopause, they're the ones helping out the younger generations because they've cultivated those resilience practices. And I just see, men and women that are closer to my age, they don't really have those resilience tools in their toolkit quite yet. And just one thing I want to mention is just part of my journey. My meditation practice continues to evolve. The same types of grounding meditation practices that I even did 2-3 months ago is different than what I'm doing now. And I'm curious for you if you also noticed that too.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody starts at a certain place and it's different for each person. And that's what's really so much fun about this. Someone who I will never journal ends up that journaling is the greatest tool that's ever existed for them and a huge release. So I found everybody changes. Once you start somewhere, and it doesn't matter where you start. That's what's so beautiful. You can start with anything and it doesn't matter how small. And I think that's important, Rachel, because the one thing we don't want overwhelm, trying to improve your happiness and you're overwhelmed. So in terms of any little step that people start, it's a journey. It's exactly what it is. And then you keep building and things transform. And exactly what I did, my meditation is very different now than it used to be. And so each person goes on their journey, and it's sort of like a smorgasbord of things. That's what I like to give people. This will work for this person, that will work for that. And people know what feels good, what resonates, what expands them. So
Perfect. So this is a great segue into what I want to ask you next. How does increasing our happiness impact, improve, support our health and well-being? And I'll just tell you right now, clients that I work with that are they have different practices to subdue their stress levels. And when we're stressed out, you're getting more cortisol, you're in that sympathetic nervous system state, your hormones are going to be out of whack. Guess what? Hormones regulate pretty well everything in our body. And if your energetics are off, your mental capacity isn't really where we want it to be, this will impact our skin. And what are some of the biggest, impacts, without making any medical claims? Obviously, we are educational info only here, not medical advice. If you think you have a medical condition, be sure to seek the guidance of a licensed physician. But what are you seeing? The happiness.
It's unbelievable because there's research on this. So there's a 35% less likely, people who are happy are 35% less likely to get sick. So think about that. Just by doing some happiness habits, you're significantly improving your immunity. Cortisol level, which you alluded to, which affects so much our blood pressure, our bones. It actually affects the osteoblasts, the bone building cells, but cortisol level is 32% lower in people who are happier. So that's huge. Sleep disturbances, which affects our skin, again, it affects every organ in our body, is 47% higher in people who aren't happy. And people who are happier, get this, live 9 years longer. So there's all sorts of things that the happiness, they've even correlated it to increased bone density. So we could go through so many heart disease, we could go through so many things, cholesterol level. I mean, there's really, it's amazing. And I discovered this, as I said, very early on. So it's been just part of what I do. And a lot of people don't realize that. They're so worried about taking care of the pressing issue that they don't realize that they can do these great things for themselves and for others. And that will actually also help their health. So it's quite amazing.
That's great. I love it. All right, so let's talk about some metrics here. So you mentioned sleep. I track my sleep with what's called the Aura Ring. And so last night I actually had a pretty good sleep, but my deep sleep wasn't where it should be, but it was still considered an optimal rest. It's really good for you to know what your physiological biomarkers are, because it can just give you a little bit of insight. Okay, today I'm going to push myself, or today I'm just going to take it easy a little bit. Looking at those metric points for us to see where we are for, what's great for our physiology, and then kind of how to optimize things in a way that's just right for you. So talk about the metric that you have identified here, which is the happiness set point, our base level of happiness. Can we actually increase our happiness set point? Tell us a little bit about your scale.
Yeah, this is the most amazing thing. It's not my scale. They've done major research on this because a lot of people think, you know what, I'm just a person where the glass is half empty. I've always been that way. My whole family is like that, and that's it. And the truth is, most of us have a happiness set point, sort of like a thermostat. We can get a little happier, we can get a little sadder, but we hover around a certain area. But the best news is that we can improve this. But what does it compromise? So most people think, if you ask most people, and think about this, everybody listening, like, what do you think constitute our happiness set point? Most people think it's our circumstances. Are you in a good relationship? Do I have a good job? Do I have enough money? Most people think if I could, if I got that other job, or I had a different husband or a different partner, then I'd be happy. But the truth is, it only counts for 10%. Circumstances only make up 10% of this happiness set point. 50% is genetic. However, with epigenetics, meaning that we can now turn on and off our genes, we can even affect this. But 40% is from our habits. So it's amazing how much power we have over this happiness set point. So,
Okay, you just talked about something pretty rad there. So let's just break this down for a second. People tuning in, what's epigenetics? What is this? So basically, your thumbprint is your genetic blueprint, right?
right.
So what happens is the way that we live our lives impacts our gene expression. The gene expression is then what correlates into hormone imbalances, accelerated aging, different things creeping up if we let our environment run our genetic show, if you will. What's another spin that you might have on the concept of epigenetics, so that if people have some type of, something running in the background that they might be predisposed to, how can they say really improve their happiness genes and reduce environmental issues impacting their happiness expression?
Well, one part of happiness is our health as well. It's sort of like our mind body, taking care of your body. And so, that goes with nutrition, exercise, all of that. It goes sort of both ways. It's that if you take care of yourself, your genes are going to be happy, your cells are going to be happy, and you're going to feel better. Versus when you feel better, you're more apt to partake in all these good habits. So it's sort of like a nice cycle. But your question is with epigenetics, most people think, oh, I have heart disease in my family, I'm going to get heart disease. But I think, as we all know, that's not the case. And we have, I look at my father-in-law, who recently passed away, but had terrible, terrible cardiac issues and had bypasses and was on medication pretty much most of his adult life. But yet my husband could have the same genes, but eats really well, exercises, reduces his stress. So they don't have to show themselves. You have control over them. It's like a switch you turn on and off. And not always, but we have a huge, now they're showing that just because we may have a family disposition, or maybe more likely, does not necessarily mean, by any sense of the word, that you're going to have that issue if you take care of yourself.
And it's not a bad idea to stick up for yourself. If you're in a certain situation, there's, food being provided for you, or you're looking at food choices, don't underestimate the power of what goes in, comes out, actually on your happiness level. So I did a previous interview with Dr. Lauren Lax in my recent winter skin camp program. And she was just, dropping knowledge bombs left, right, and center. It was awesome. And one of the things that she mentioned was so you have a, happiness journal that's going to be in the show notes. Also take into account how you're living and how you're eating, and then your feelings, because that can tie into your hormone regulation or dysregulation, which of course is going to ultimately impact your happiness. So that's just another way of, I think, reframing what you mentioned.
Oh, I think that is so important. I didn't get into that, but our thoughts completely can control everything. Our thoughts are incredibly powerful, whether we're believing things that are true or not true. And that's huge. And you can, that's what I see all the time. And the truth is, the research shows 80% of the average person's thoughts are negative. Think about that. How pathetic is that? 80% of our thoughts are negative.
That's a pretty negative statistic.
Yeah. But the good news is we can rewire our brains. And that's what I love teaching people, because when you do, all of a sudden you're not swarming in the negativity. And we're wired for negativity, though, because back in the caveman days, we had to be aware of a tiger lurking. That's way more important than a person giving us a compliment. So that's how our brain is wired. The danger was more important. And think about that. Someone you get 20 compliments and one person says something negative. What do you dwell on? It's the negative. I mean, for most people, but they found that the happiest people have this reversed. And so where the positive will stick to them and the negative sort of is like, just slides off. So the good news is that this can be rewired and retrained, and that's what's so exciting. And I see this every day.
Yeah, I think this is great. So you mentioned reversal. So let's get into maybe some
Sure.
electromagnetics here.
Sure.
So we are, biophysiological organisms where we have these beautiful bodies. But if we let our sort of ionic regulation, magnetic dysregulation, energy reversals, that we can go very deep into that, how some people are, quite reversed in their energetic field. There are ways to better align that. And that's where getting into nature comes in and observing what is going in. So, we have these phones that our lives are on them right now, and we're getting shown certain things intentionally. And so one of the ways that I improve my happiness is I literally have my phone off. I get way out of, any sounds of people or cars, airplanes, vehicles, as well as EMF exposure. So I'm just really curious about your take on the electromagnetic super all-in with Wi-Fi and EMF and how that impacts our happiness.
Oh, I think that's huge. I totally agree with you. I turn my Wi-Fi off at night, and truly, I tell people, get in nature. You want to ground yourself, because this is so unnatural right now, and especially now when so many of us are home, being in this kind of environment. So the best thing to do is, how can you ground yourself? By going outside. If it's nice out, barefoot, just getting in the woods. They've done lots of studies, just being in the forest, in the woods, and anywhere. So I think that's one of the best things that people can do. And just being in the quiet, however you want, whether it's meditation, whether just sitting, but so often we have so much bombarding us. And then you add on that the EMFs and everything else. So by just like getting rid of everything, being a minimalist and just sort of getting back to your breath and feeling different sensations in your body, doing exercise, more mind body, can make all the difference in the world. It's really quite miraculous when you add, even just stopping. If you have a job and you're at the computer, then take a break, go outside, even if it's cold, bundle up, just get yourself away. It makes, and I think even just turning the Wi-Fi off at night is huge. And I know I have one of these cases that helps prevent, where is it? It helps reduce the EMF exposure. And there's things that you can do if you're sitting next to the router. I mean, that could be a whole talk in itself as well. But sure, anything, it's like a toxic overload. The body can handle so much before everything explodes. And same thing with your happiness level. We can tolerate some toxins, we can tolerate something, but when it gets too much, it's sort of, did you ever watch I Love Lucy?
Yes. And that
Okay.
was one of my favorite childhood
Yes.
shows, actually.
So there's an episode where Ethel and Lucy are working in a chocolate factory, and it's the machines going and they're coming off of, and they're wrapping the chocolates and everything's going fine. And then it speeds up and all havoc breaks loose. Chocolates are all over the place. And it's sort of like that with our bodies as well. We can handle some things. Same thing with our food. I mean, I'm very big into eating clean, and I think our food has a huge impact on everything, including our happiness. But the point is, you can handle some toxins. We can handle it. When it gets too much, that's when everything starts breaking down. And so the more we can control these things, whatever it is, it's going to have an impact on our happiness, on our health, on our skin, everything.
So I have a resource to share with all of you guys. So Groundology, this is a UK-based website, and there's actually a lot of research on the effect of grounding on our blood. So if you're watching this interview on Facebook or YouTube, right now I'm holding up a screenshot. So some of the images of the red blood cells here are very, like, they're almost congealed, they're clumped together. The organization of the cells are actually very irregular. So if you notice that on this side here, very irregular spacing of the cells. And then if you look on the other side, the red blood cells are equally spaced apart. They're not clumped, they're not overlapping. The size of the red blood cell is actually more uniform. So little sneak peek into one of my papers I'm going to be writing next year is I'm actually going to look at how grounding can potentially create more organization of our collagen and elastin fibers. Because if it does that to our red blood cells, it creates more harmony, more organization between the ionic attractions between different cells, because everything has a charge in us, positive, negative. We got our water, we got our oxygen, hydrogen. They are electromagnetically brought together, and if that's off, you're going to have dysregulation of bonding and uniformity and things like that. So doesn't that sound fascinating?
Oh my gosh, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, if that can affect the skin, what is it doing to our bones on that level that you just mentioned? Fascinating, everything. Rachel. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so that's going to be, my wheels are turning for that.
Yeah. So amazing. Wonderful.
Anyone tuning in, if you have some resources to add to the body of knowledge, I'm going to start to put that research together. I'm actually an executive board member for a plastic surgery nursing journal and a peer reviewer. So I'm a huge nerd when it comes to getting information out there through obviously reputable peer reviewed sources. So that's going to be my next rabbit hole.
Fantastic. Love that.
So Margie, can you give our audience an example of one of your happiness tips? What's something that we can do today to be happier people?
Yeah, I think there's so many, but I think we're going to start with the mind, since we talked about that. And I think right now, so many people are so negative, and there's just a lot that's happened. So let's start with the mindset. How can we switch this negativity? So I'm going to give you 3 that you can, they're all pretty easy. Number 1 is start looking for the good. Be a detective. So often we wake up in the morning and we think of what's not working when there's great things working in your life. You could be, I know there's been times I've been riding my bike in a park, and if I'm thinking about something else, I miss the beautiful trees. So there's a lot of great things around us, and sometimes we don't look for it. So be a detective. Just start looking for what's good. However, if you really have an issue with that, then make awards. Pretend you're going to give 5 awards for the nicest person, the nicest looking tree, the cutest animal, whatever it is. Make up any awards that are positive, just to start retraining you to start looking for what's good and what's working. Number 1. Number 2, when something good happens, savor it. Savor it for at least 20 seconds. So Rachel, you have done such an amazing job on this podcast and the work you do. So instead of saying, oh, it's nothing, thank you so much. I work really hard. I really try to give good information to everybody listening. You just soak it up and take it in. You see a beautiful sunset. It's okay to take a picture because you can see it later, but stop, absorb it. We just want to magnify the good. So number 2 is to savor it for 20 seconds. Number 3 is when you get the negative thought. Now we're going to get them. The goal is not to push them out. There's ways we can do things, but for right now, for the sake of being easy, when you get the negative thought, okay, but then think of 3 true but positive things. So you're sort of going to help offset the balance. Okay, I got that. But what else is going right? And just think of 3 other true but positives. And I promise you that will start the process of rewiring your brain. And it's just a much, when you look at the world through a lens of what's working and what's going right, it's amazing. Even if you are a person, where a negative Nelly or whatever, it can change. And I've had people, I promise you, I've been doing this for so many years, and, start with little steps, but these three are easy. You can implement them immediately. And I can, see what happens. It's really huge.
Wonderful. So start looking at the good. So the silver linings, you might have been hearing that a lot, especially this year. But I mean, no joke. We have had a pretty interesting opportunity. And there are definitely some people that have been doing really well and some people that have been really struggling. But always look for the good. And I always like to recommend people look at the beauty around them as a way to perpetuate that good. So seeing that beautiful sunrise, seeing, the beautiful trees and leaves and the beautiful sounds of nature around you, look for beauty and savor the goodness for at least 20 seconds. That's awesome, because I find that for myself, I really struggle with this too. It's like something great pops up. Okay, awesome. On to the next thing, right? It's like, no, let's kind of like drop down a couple octaves and just like really sit with things that make us feel good for longer. I think that was so beautiful. And tip 3, if negative thoughts creep in, which, like you mentioned before, really important for our survival, but not for our long-term health and goodness and all of that. Think of 3 true positives. So that's kind of cool. It's almost like to tip the scales a little bit.
Exactly. You got it.
I think that is just wonderful. So Margie, do you have any closing words for kindness and joy promotion?
Yeah, I'll tell about kindness. I think one of the, especially now, right now, kindness is so very important. But something, by sending out loving kindness, it's just one of the fastest ways to make yourself happy. When just even, you don't even have to say anything, but just spreading good thoughts and kindness to others, it's such a win-win situation. And I think the more we can cultivate kindness in this world today, the better. I mean, they've even done studies showing that when people just send, I call it HPH, health, prosperity, happiness. I just made that term up. And so I send that to everybody, and it's just, you don't say it. You're just from your heart sending it. And it's just, I think the more you can spread kindness, whether you even like the person or not, but just spreading goodness and kindness, the world needs that right now, but we can really, like, each person can make a big difference.
And just a little tip, if you experience someone that's, really going through a hard time and they don't have a lot of kindness around them, like, it's important for you to protect yourself from that, because, there's a lot of division happening right now. There's a lot of polarizing, and that's kind of changing this year, the whole concept of duality. That, again, that's a whole other breadth of information. But do your due diligence to protect your level of kindness and joy. And if you feel someone kind of like sucking that out of you, like, that's not okay. You have the permission to not allow that. You have more permission over yourself than you might realize.
Can I just say one thing? It's contagious, absolutely. And as a physical therapist working on people, that negativity can come right back to you. So what I like to do is fill myself with white light. And when you fill yourself with white light, it's hard for darkness to come in, and then just send it out there. But if there's really, sometimes there are those people, just like you said, Rachel, that take you down, the negativity, or if you feel it. And we need to protect ourselves. We have to care about ourselves and love ourselves. It's crucial, because if we don't give ourselves the self-care and love, it's very hard to give that to others. So we need to fill up our bucket. But you do need to protect yourself. And what I've, either try to stay away from those people or you just put up a little shield. Like, you can actually put a little barrier if you have to, or make barriers with those people so that they don't take over your life. But the white light is easy. You can just, if you're going into a room and you don't know, just fill yourself with white light. It's so easy, and it's so, so helpful. People love that.
Yeah, and I feel like the more you work with people, or some of us out there, I think of my best friend, she is like ultra empathic and very sensitive to people's energy. So if you're just noticing that, that's okay. Take a step away. These are some pretty heavy times. Do, call in some type of protection with whatever works with in alignment with your lineage and all of that. Don't forget about that the protection is really there for yours, for the taking. Quick question here that came up. Living from the heart and gut more so than our headspace. What do you think about that concept?
Oh, absolutely. The heart is so important. In my class, we do an entire thing on living from the heart and being open hearted. And there's a Heart Math Institute that's done major research
You
in
guys got to
terms
check
of,
out that resource, the Heart Math
I mean,
Institute.
it's incredible. And you can see on the EKG when people are living, it's your heart rhythm coherence. And when people are living in with an open heart, love, gratitude, appreciation, it's very different. It's like a coherent pattern. It's not erratic when you're living in frustration and anger. So absolutely, like when you point to yourself, you point to your heart, because the heart is the essence of our soul in every culture, in every religion, tradition. So I totally, that's a great thing that you wrote. But yes, I believe that's so very important that we live from our heart. And that's number one. But we need to control our mind so our mind doesn't take over. So those are all pillars. I have like a home for happiness. So that's pillar. The pillar of the heart is number three. The pillar of the soul, the pillar of the mind is number two.
Yeah. Thank you so much for mentioning the Heart Math Institute, because it's such a fabulous resource. All of you tuning in, if this is your first time hearing about it, some of my favorite speakers on this topic are Dr. Joe Dispenza. I had the pleasure of actually doing, an event with him, and it just like was really powerful, and experiencing that heart brain coherence in a group setting of, I think there were probably 1,000 people, probably more, maybe even 2,000 people in this one room, and we're all kind of doing these sweet meditations together. There's a lot of power in that. We don't have that right now. It's done in different ways, more electronically now. So how are you managing that, by the way?
Oh, I have been doing group after group. It's really helped me just having these live programs in my class and just getting together with people. That's been huge in terms of really, it's very interesting though, because I've noticed that people who have taken my class, and people continue once a month just to stay in this zone, and they really are more resilient like when they practice. So I think we all lift each other up, and I think that's important. And I think the key thing is just getting involved with things bigger than yourself. And so getting involved in movements, or this is a time, instead of it's going to go away, things are improving, things are getting better. We're going to look back, but what did you do during this time? So if you do things for yourself, for organizations, to make the world a better place, when you get involved with something bigger than yourself, it's huge. And with people. So that's how I've been doing so many different things that I've really kept myself on a, higher frequency. And I think, everyone has their areas what their areas of. So I think for me, it's been helping people reduce stress and helping people increase their happiness through this, and resilience. So it's also been beneficial to me to just work with these groups and keep doing this. And we all, as I said, we all lift each other up.
Yeah, I am so incredibly grateful for what you're doing. And, just to take a step back to the work that I did when I was in high school and, university, I was pumping gas. I was working at Starbucks before I got into, obviously the medical field. But no matter what you're doing, service with a smile, you never know what your smile or smiling with your eyes, because yes, a lot of us are having our mouth covered at this point. So, but just like really do what you can to extend happiness to those that you interact with. You just really never know what someone else is going through right now, and what your kind words could potentially do to impact their lives and their day.
And there's nothing that makes you feel better. And it goes the other way though. When someone does something nice to you, appreciate them. It's interesting. I just recently, this is so crazy, got a letter from a woman I worked with over 30 years ago, an appreciation letter telling me that I don't, I didn't even remember who she was, but telling me that because of what I did to help her back pain, because she was she's been able to live a full life. I was sobbing. I'm just, so tell those people who have meant something to you that, what they've done and they appreciate, write them an appreciation letter or whatever it is, just make sure to tell people, because there's nothing people like more than appreciation. It's nothing, when what you're doing is appreciated, it feels so good. So it's good to be, just like you said, Rachel, that's so important, to extend that kindness. It means so much. But when someone does it for you, it also means a lot to give them your appreciation.
And if finding the words are difficult for you, just feel into that expression that you're having for that individual, and just them being around you, maybe they'll pick up on that. Because sometimes when we say things, our words can actually distort our feelings and our true intentions. This is definitely, again, a whole other topic, but just like really being in resonance with that as much as you can for as long as you can is just a wonderful gift to yourself and others. Thank you so much for joining us, Margie. What a pleasure to have you on this show here. Where can people find you? How can people work with you?
Oh, great. So my website's just margiebissinger.com. And you have the links in terms of, there's my classes. I do work with people one-on-one. But, I have the class on the happiness that you're going to, so I would say that would be the best way in terms of the happiness class. And I'm also doing a reset program, but the happiness class, I would say, is the best way to start. And the journal, you can start seeing what things work with you.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Margie, you are just like a gift right now for people tuning in. Your podcast, the Happy Bones podcast, definitely make sure you're the Happy Bones, Happy Life podcast. All of Margie's links are in our show notes. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for the kindness and the joy that you are spreading on your platforms as well.
And thank you, Rachel, for all the goodness that you're spreading and all the incredible work that you're doing.
Wonderful. Everybody have a fabulous rest of the day. Tuning into these calls together is really fun. So what you can do on Facebook or YouTube is just hit that bell notification so that you know when I go live, because it's really fun getting some live Q&A questions in the background here, which I can then add value to our interviews here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a podcast review, and share this episode with a friend or family member who you think could really benefit from a little bit of a happiness topic podcast show. So listen to this on the go. If you're listening, you got your headphones on, just make sure you smile to people, and don't underestimate eye contact and smiling right now, and maintaining that ever important connection with ourselves and others. So until next time, we'll see you back here on the Rachel Varga podcast, and have a great rest of the day, everybody. And thank you so much, Margie, for joining us today.
Thank you.